Welcome to On the Couch with the Galbreaths. We are here at Atlanta Contemporary. I feel like our couch is like the magic carpet. You don't know where it's going to be next. Got a Soleil Galbreath, my right and left hand over here, hanging out, chilling. Appreciate you. And we are here today with Floyd Hall, the director of Atlanta Contemporary.
Executive director.
Executive director. Okay. Please pronounce the executive. That's what's up.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate you being here. We appreciate you being here.
Welcome.
We're obviously at your job.
Welcome. This is my job. Yes. Welcome to my job.
Thank you.
So I'll start it off right because near and dear to my heart is, where did you go to high school, sir?
Oh, of course. The mighty Lions of Westlake High School on the South Side.
Okay.
No wonder your life turned out so well.
You know,
good for you.
I give all credit to the South Side, man. Westlake High School, I would not be the person I am today without Westlake High School.
And I feel the same way about me and George.
Yo, it's
we
real.
would not be us without Westlake High School.
I actually had a student come at me one time because, old Westlake was different, right?
Yeah, it was different.
And, he was somewhere between B-boy, football player.
Sounds about right.
Thanks.
Yeah. But he was a good kid, though.
Yeah.
He just had, he had a challenging upbringing.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, G, you in the right place. Money make money. And he was just talking about how successful. He was basically just saying how successful students are at Westlake just because they're around other successful students.
Yeah.
He said, money make money. I said, I hear that. I'll get that tatted on me. All right.
I'll just say this, and I'll say this really, just honestly, I'm a fan of public school. I went to public school, but I think one of the things I love is when other alums of Westlake pop out in different ways. And you see them doing their thing, and someone will say, "Oh, they went to Westlake, right?"
Yeah.
That's my favorite, favorite type of experience, because you're enjoying them shining in the world, and then you realize, "Oh, that's right."
Yep.
Westlake.
So, what is your background? Tell us how Floyd kind of came to be to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
From a love of the arts,
Yeah.
love of Atlanta perspective.
Sure,
right?
but
put a little context around the greatness of Floyd Hall.
the great.
Yeah, for sure.
My mom thanks you for saying that. If she sees this, she can stop it right now. She needs to hear that part.
The greatness
They're
of
right,
Floyd
and then
Hall.
she can go off and
All things arts
yeah.
in Atlanta.
But I do want to credit my mom, and I'll also credit Westlake. So I'm a math and science kid. And so when I was at Westlake, we had a math and science magnet program, and that was the thing that I was interested in. I am still a mathematician in my head, still an engineer in my head in terms of how I see the world. But I got my start at Westlake, but I also played in the marching band.
Yeah.
And played baseball. So when I was there, I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So when I was there,
Renaissance man.
Right.
but I feel like growing up, you did everything that you could do. So your parents put you in everything that you showed some sort of aptitude for.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think, your kid can do a little bit of something on, the track and field side, you're going to go out there and run. If you can do a little bit of something on the basketball court, whatever. Basketball court, not really, because, height. But math and science and marching band, those were the things that informed a lot of my experience in high school, and I think beyond that. And so my travels through Morehouse College and through Georgia Tech as a dual degree engineering student continued how I was raised, in Atlanta, and then carried me into a space where I was able to still always find a way to do both.
Right.
And so by the time I got to Georgia Tech, so coming from Atlanta, you love it. You just have a love of your neighborhood, all of your community type of inputs, but the sense of you can still do all these things together was always very present. So when I got to Westlake, when I got to through Morehouse, went to Georgia Tech, I was a student producer. So I was in my mechanical engineering coursework, but also worked producing things like this.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I was writing, I was editing, I was shooting, and I learned how to be a producer with a media framework.
And there's a creative component to that, you know?
Yeah,
There's storytelling, there's all that.
all that. So I was doing that while I was still in school. When I left school and I was on my engineering job per se, I would still be active on the weekends and after work. And I had friends who were artists. And so I would show up, holding the reflector on a photo shoot.
Gotcha.
I would show up an extra set of hands to carry mic stands or whatever. I would just kind of hang around. And I think that I was always trying to find ways to still be near creativity. But I want to put a pin in that there and also talk about the sciences, because I feel like people separate the sciences or isolate the sciences as a place where you're not creative. And so, again, I go back to this notion of seeing the art and the science as integrated, and being, a performer through art, through band and all that kind of stuff. You begin to see where there is science in everything and where there's art in everything. And so,
Love that.
even when I was at Georgia Tech, which is not far from where we are, I remember thinking about the materiality. So, you're an artist, you know your materials, the more you can master your materials, and what they can do for you as an artist, the limits of those materials, how temperature or environment
And their
or
relationship to one another.
all of that,
Right.
That's interesting.
all of that.
I hope
So
my administrators are listening, because this is advocating for STEAM right now.
For sure.
This is all the way STEAM.
for
Okay,
sure.
all
And so understanding the science of the art materials that someone has to use to navigate and advance a career, I'm still passionate about that.
Wow.
Because I think that's how you create better artists. If you don't know your materials, you're limited in how well you can effectively, create the things you're trying to create. So I've always been fascinated with the science that's in art, and then the art that you get to create out of science. And when I was at Morehouse, I want to give them a shout always. That's where I learned to be open to these new fields and spaces of thought. So I was a math major, and most people think of math as numbers.
Right.
But by the time you get to your junior and senior year, it's all abstract concepts.
Okay.
So you're
Relationships.
and relationships. And so you're imagining these new and different things. You're thinking about what is a ring, not like a ring, no, but like you're imagining all of these different sets and rings and all of these things. And then you're performing operations on these imaginary things in your head.
So, Flo, I don't know, I think we've talked about my engineering background. So I was a double E major, and I was a math minor. And I spend 80-90% of my time working with artists now.
Yeah.
And those relationships. And even my sister taught in the math and science technology program at Westlake.
That's how we met, actually.
So she was a teacher in America,
Blind
and then
date.
she hooked us on a blind date.
There we go.
So that's
Man.
but she used to love to hang out in the art wing.
Yeah.
That was how she knew George, because she
Yeah.
would hang out down in the art wing.
Yeah.
So just that the merger of it all,
Sure.
and how it all kind of operates.
And the
together.
story always says that the arts need more engineers.
I co-sign that. I co-sign that because I think going back to this math background, it is about relationships. I say that a lot. You have an equation and you have an equal sign, but really the equal sign is just to define the relationship. You can
Between-
manipulate
yes.
all the other things on either side of that, but you're really trying to redefine and reimagine the relationships.
Can I tell
Sorry, Jordan. We about to have a math conversation.
one of my favorite things to do? So this is how I entertain myself.
Yeah.
I would do these birthday equations, right? And they were dates, and they were just all about the relationships between numbers. And some years ago, I started painting them, right? And I would gift them every so often to somebody.
It's her first time touching my art supplies. Okay. All right. So
But just it's I don't know, it makes me happy to talk about relationships
Sure.
and a lot of the work that we do that we've done together.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
It's all about the relationships.
Sure.
So in this art space, the relationships, and I know you were talking about it from a math perspective.
It all
but
works.
just- yeah.
It all fits. And I would say this, when I say I'm still a mathematician, it is in that particular way because in the moments where I've been producing art things or as a curator, I'm thinking about how this and that fit together, or where can we draw, you know, the patterns or the connections, or why these two could work together. So you're still, for me, I'm still seeing the world through the relationship side of it, and where can we find a hidden relationship or bring something more to the forefront and make it more meaningful, or remind people that it can be what it could be. And so I'm still, I think, processing the world as a mathematician, as an engineer, because that is still my default training. So my default training is that, my default experience is Atlanta. And so I'm usually navigating all the spaces that I get to navigate, thinking about the community that I've come from, and then how do we relate all of those things within that together, and to make new connections, or, you know, just new experiences for people.
That's interesting, because when I think of you, or at least our introduction to you, I think of the academic, I think of your writing, and I'm wondering kind of where that fits in. Like, well, when did you even get to a point where you started to say, okay, I'm gonna talk about hip hop, I'm gonna talk about art, I'm gonna talk about these relationships, but writing about it, that almost seems like a different talent, a different skill.
Yeah, you know, I do want to give credit to the people that you may find yourself around, who see things in you that you may not see for yourself.
Wow.
And I think I go back to so the short version of the story is that I was in engineering, and then left to go to business school. So I went to Columbia in New York. And while I was there, we were put into learning groups. So in my learning group, there were 4 or 5 of us. One of us was from China. One of us was from Ukraine, South Korea, Boston. Like, we're all like scattered and bringing the world together into our classroom settings. And we have to create group presentations.
Okay.
So at the end of the projects, I couldn't just let the project feel like it was created by 5 different people. Like, I would typically like rewrite or like edit everyone's work into one voice.
Wow. Okay.
And so,
which sounds like a challenge.
it is a bit of a challenge, but to me, it was just like, we can't turn this in like this.
Right.
It was in my, yes, like it's not wrong, but it's not elegant, you know? And so at that point, probably another like 4 or 5 years, and I was working in the arts, and I had a friend who had just become editor at ARTiculate ATL at the time.
Okay.
And we had known each other for a while, and they reached out and said, hey, have you ever thought about writing? And in that moment, I'd never written anything before. But in both my Morehouse and Atlanta ways, when she said, have you ever written before? I was like, yeah. She was like, have you ever thought about it? I was like, sure. Like, what are you looking for? And so that was the beginning of my writing space in the arts, but also it didn't feel foreign, because up until that point, I had interviewed, you know, dozens and dozens of Atlanta artists. I've been doing my own version of research through my work over time. And so I was building a knowledge base to begin to do some writing. I write about what I know. I write about what I love. I write about what I think about a lot. Like, I think about Atlanta a lot. I think about Atlanta a lot because I'm both nostalgic, but I'm also not nostalgic. Like, I'm not holding on to things that don't exist anymore.
Gotcha.
I want us to recognize and honor those things, but I'm not trying to go back to everything how it was before. So it's in this space of recognizing the change, trying to contextualize the change, document the change, like properly document what needs to be documented so that we can move forward.
Right. Yeah.
I think that one of the challenges within Atlanta, within the arts, is a lot of things go undocumented. We don't know that they happened. And then you get generations of people who assume a thing never happened before they got there.
Yes. So true.
But I think some of that too, I think sometimes we play small and we wait for the person to ask us the question. We wait for the opportunity, right, to come from somewhere else. We think it's supposed to come from somewhere else. And I think it's important when you talk about documentation that it's not necessarily about Floyd documenting artist Y. It's just as important for artist Y to document what they're doing and to share their story and their narrative because people want to hear it.
Sure.
Like, it's not, at a certain point, like even with the On the Couch, right? On the Couch with the Galbreaths, is this, like, are we doing this for vanity? Like, are we doing this because we want to hear ourselves? No, we're doing this because we want to hear what you have to say and we want other people to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
And we want it to be here after we're not here anymore.
Yeah.
And the same thing for ARTiculate, right? Like we did the documentary and ARTiculate was only 10 years old. And there were a lot of people who said, thank you for not waiting until it was 20 or 25 or 50 years and people dead and people gone.
Sure.
But to do it in real time. And I think the challenge that I present to other people is that you don't have to wait for somebody else to tell your story.
No.
You don't have to wait for somebody to interview you. We have so much at our disposal that we can do this.
Sure.
Like we can do this.
Most definitely.
We can self-publish a book with our collection and ask Floyd Hall to write for us.
Speaking of,
The
Galbreath Collection, a decade of collecting Atlanta. Forward, right?
Yeah,
by
Forward.
Floyd Hall. It's a beautiful thing. That's right here.
It's very beautiful.
Put that right there. Because we're documenting. You know, we are documenting.
Yes,
So that's a
yes,
beautiful
we are.
thing.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that though, because I, even within an institution, one of the things that I emphasize a lot is how well do we know our history? How well do we know what happened? How are we documenting what has happened? Who has been here?
Yeah.
And at almost every stop in my career, that's been a consistent theme of what I've tried to do is make sure that we're capturing what's happening. And also to your point, Zoe, not waiting.
And I love your evolving role in this ecosystem because, I mean, from ARTiculate moderator, from
Right. I mean,
artist
that like
talks.
the first time we had an artist talk was 2017, I believe. 2017. And we couldn't afford the venue that was gifted, right? We couldn't afford honorariums for the moderator or for the panelists. And when we asked you if you would moderate, you said yes. Like you always said yes. And you've said yes since then. But to go from there in 2017, and here we are 7 years later, and you're hosting us in the space of which you're the executive director. And it's a beautiful space and it means so much to Atlanta. But what do you, I mean, because this role is fairly new.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to? Like, what are you looking forward to within that, within this new role?
Yeah, you know, I talk about Atlanta a lot. Hello. But I think, you know, I'll take you back and then forward. This organization is 50 plus years old.
Oh, wow.
1973. And so in some ways, I'm the caretaker of a legacy of 50 years and generations of artists and thinking about both the futurity of Atlanta and its past. We're always navigating both of those things as people in Atlanta, and I think as institutions also. So I'm thinking forward while also trying to bring the past with us and making sure that we don't leave that behind, that we take that with us. And so a couple of things are important to me.
Right.
One is, how do we understand the sprawl of Atlanta? So Atlanta was a very different place in 1973. We now are over 11, 12, 13 counties in the Atlanta area. So there's City of Atlanta, there's Metro Atlanta, and then there's the idea of Atlanta. Like there's this Atlanta diaspora that exists where the idea of Atlanta, whether it's on your timeline or your time zone, is much, much,
Broader, bigger.
It's way bigger than the geography
Of Atlanta.
And so how are we as a contemporary art space positioned to travel that continuum of space and time, presenting work where we're presenting work of artists who are at pivotal points in their careers to expand into that diaspora, right?
Okay.
But also not losing our roots, holding space for what still is of this place, pulling things in that may be broader, helping the folks who are here slingshot out of here. You know, those are the things that I think as a contemporary space that is occupying this sort of middle tier of the ecosystem. We're not a collecting gallery, right? We're not a commercial gallery. We're not a collecting museum. We're really about how are we capturing what it feels like to be in Atlanta right now at any moment.
Okay.
I want people to see a yearly membership to this place like they would go on to Six Flags when we were kids.
Nice.
Six Flags, every summer you get your season pass.
Okay.
And then you go there as many times as you want. I want people to get their yearly membership to Atlanta Contemporary.
Okay.
And come here.
As many times. Yeah.
This is the community.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. I want the people who are of this place, in this place, to feel like this is a place for them to show up and to invest in that.
Okay. I think we have our marching orders, you know. I think ARTiculate can help with that.
Let's do it.
I will cheers to that. And I don't have a glass, so I'm just gonna go, hey, hold this whole bottle right here, you know.
Yeah.
Look some kind of way,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.